Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. If you love historic monuments or if you love puzzle games, then I've got the right thing for you. I'll show you today how to play World Wonders, a game by Mendes, published by Arcane Wonders, a game for 1 to 5 players, lasts about 70 minutes, and it is recommended starting at age 14. This game has special rules for the 1-player game, and it also has advanced rules for the 2 to 5 player game. I won't explain those you have to read up in the instructions. But other than that, I'll show you as usual. I'll show you first how you can win this game, how you get the points for it. Then I'll show you how you actually play it. I'll give you some hints. And at the very end, you'll find the setup section for this game. And before we get started, please subscribe to the channel. But now, let me show you how to play this game.
Rule the game.
In World Wonders, you're trying to build a city that has a rather large population, but it also has a very good mix of different kinds of buildings with monuments in there, and also some parks that people can use to go and enjoy themselves. At the end of the game, which is triggered by either playing 10 rounds or by somebody having a full population, which is shown here when somebody reaches here the purple field, we'll then take the main board and turn it around, and we'll use it to count our points. There are 5 criteria by which you're scored. They're all shown here on your player marker board. We'll start first on top by checking where your population marker is. Now, I've actually set up the board for somewhere in the middle of the game, which is why my population marker hasn't moved further yet. But if I had my population marker here, I will get 2 victory points. These arm rings are victory points. I will get 2. Had I reached here, you get 3, and here's 1, and below is just a 0. Next, you'll get as many points as the lowest of your resource trackers is on. In this case, I really neglected here the red one, so then the red one is only on 2, so I'll only get 2 points here. Next, we'll get points for the monuments. While you were building your city, you got monuments cards for every single monument that you placed down. And if you look at those now, you'll see that they all also have these arm rings, and I have a total of 3. So I'll get another 3 points here. Then the 4th way to get points is here with these tree rock formations that you have several on the board, and you'll get a victory point for each of those spaces that is adjacent to one of the tiles or one of the structures that you put down. I have here 1, 2, and 3 that are adjacent to something that I've put down. That's 3 points here. And finally, you'll also get points for each city tile that is completely surrounded by non-green spaces. That could be the lake, that could be also a road, that could be another city tile that's surrounded. You see examples here. For example, this one is completely surrounded, so is this one. That's 2 points already. This one has green spaces around it. This one also has a green space up here, so does this one. And then this one here is actually also surrounded, so I would have a total of 3 points that I get from this. Besides the 5 ways to score points, you might have also gotten a loan and never paid it back. If you did, you'll actually have to deduct 2 victory points from your total score. In case of a tie, the person with the most monuments wins. Obviously, I did terribly, but as I said, I kind of try to just represent what I would have as a board in the middle of the game, and that's how you get the points, and that's how you should be building your city to get most of the points. World Wonders is a turn-based game. It is played in 10 rounds at the most. Now, it is important that the turn order here is always defined by the order that you see up here. So it doesn't matter how you sit. It really just depends who's first here, second, third, and fourth. Now there's a way to change the turn order, and I'll show you that later. But we'll start the round first. Now during each turn, you can do exactly one action. And your actions will run out as soon as your gold coin here has reached 7. That's when you've used up all your money and you can't really continue anymore. That is, unless you decide before you reach 7 to take a loan, which you can do at any point before you reach the 7. And in this case now, you have an additional 2 coins that you can use. In this case, you can now go to 9. You have to know, though, that you can always take only one loan at a time, and this loan has to be paid back. If you don't pay back, it's going to cost you 2 victory points at the end, and you'll have to pay back by paying 3 coins later in another round. Taking a loan or repaying it and returning it does not count as an action. So we start the round by doing a first action. To see all the actions, you can take here the player ID card. It shows you exactly what there is to do. First possible action that you have is that you buy a road. You can either buy a long road or you can buy a set of short roads. If you decide to do so, you'll advance the gold tracker by 1 because it costs you 1. And then you take whatever you want, be it the long or the short roads here, and you have to place it somewhere on your board. Now on the back of the player aid, you also see what the placement rules are. And you'll see up here, a road either has to be attached to another road, or it has to be adjacent to the sidewalk, which is down here on the bottom, or it has to be adjacent to a tower. Now I don't have a tower. I could place my road down here, but I can also place my road here, for example, adjacent to this road. Please note that when you take a set of roads, that you can actually split those roads up in different places as long as they all touch roads or they all touch a tower. Now you can also turn around your roads and use them as bridges. The rule remains that a bridge, just like a road, has to touch another road, has to touch either the sidewalk on the bottom or has to touch the tower, a tower. There is another rule for bridges, that a bridge, of course, has to start and has to end on land. It cannot be that you place it in a way that it's in the water or that even one side is in the water, but both ends have to be on land. So this would actually be legal here. After I've played my action, it's now the second player's turn. So they will now do whatever they want, pay for it, this person, and then the last person will play their first action. It comes back to me. I still have money to spend, so now I can do a second action. The second option that you have is that you buy a turn order pedestal. Those are these two here. If you're the first one to buy one, you'll take this one, you'll put it under your figure here, and you also have to pay 1 gold coin for it. Now, as you will see later, these turn order pedestals will make you the first player or the second player in the next round. The third option that you have is that you can buy a tower. The tower is right here, costs you 2, and if you take it, you can place it adjacent to any tile that you've played before. That could be either a city tile, that can be a road, that can also be a monument. Why is this important to place towers? Well, as I mentioned before, later on you can place roads that connect to a tower. And you will see when you play this game for the first time that you don't necessarily have roads that go all the way out here. And so it might be helpful for you to place a tower so that you can start another road. And why do I need roads? Well, that is the next action. You can also buy, of course, here, a tile, a city tile. The city tiles have different colors. You actually have 5 of them. You'll see them all here. And you pay for them just as much as it shows here on the backside of these other tiles. So you have a few cheap ones and then you have very expensive ones here that costs you 5. Now, if you buy a city tile, you also take it first, you pay for it. In this case, I'll pay 2. You'll then get a resource that it shows down here. And in this case, I'll move up this flower thing, 1. And then I'll place it somewhere. Now, as you see, the placing rules that I have is that I can either place it along a road, in which case the sidewalk is actually also considered a road, or I can place it adjacent to a city tile that has the same color. Now, as you can see, I don't actually have a purple piece yet in my city, so I would have to place it along a road. And if I don't have a road up here, then you see there's a little issue that you have now because you can't place these tiles. I can place it down here though, and it's not an issue. You can only buy city tiles if they also fit in your puzzle. Please note that you're always allowed to place roads and also buildings on any green space or even on top of these rock and tree spaces, but never on the water unless it's a bridge. However, you'll have to remember that when you cover up one of these rock and tree tiles, you will not get victory points for it at the end. Now you notice here on the resource tracker board also that there is a certain number of population symbols here for red, green, blue. What that means is that, let's say I had bought this building, I place it down here. Of course, I first pay for it, so that would be the 2 here. But then I'll get the 1 red resource, and I'll now hit this white face. And if I do that, then automatically I'll get another population point up here. So that's how you increase the population points automatically, by increasing the resources. Now, these were all the actions that you have over here. You haven't seen yet how to get a monument. The price for a monument is always however much money you have. So if you do it towards the end of a round, that you buy a monument now that I'm at 6, I would only have to pay 1. But after I take the monument, I'm done. If I have just started my round and I want to buy a monument now, I will also spend all my money and I would also be done. Having said that, sometimes you might want to buy a monument early so that nobody else buys it. To buy a monument, we'll first have to have a quick look at those monument cards. Each monument card first shows you the rewards you'll get. In this case, it's a victory point here, also here a victory point, and even one of those red resources. Next, it shows you where you have to place the monument. So in this case, the theater goes on 3 green spaces. And then there are some requirements down here that you need to be able to place such a monument. So in the case of the theater, it needs to be touching a city tile with an H on it. We'll have a bunch here. And it also needs to be adjacent to a rock and tree tile. Now, in my case, actually, I could fulfill these 2 requirements and also this one by placing the theater right here. You see that I've placed it on 3 green tiles, and it is adjacent to a rock and tree tile, and it is also adjacent here to an H tile. So I could do this. I'll have to move my gold marker here to 7. I will be done with this round then, because I've now touched 7. And then I also get the monument and I'll get this card. When somebody takes the monument, we will replace this empty spot right away with a new monument, and we put the new card, and we'll also find the monument in the box. Note that this is not the case for any other tile. None of the buildings, none of the roads, and not even a tower will be replaced during a round. That will happen in the next round. Only monuments will get replaced during the round when somebody takes them. Now, there are a few special rules with placing monuments, and I'll go through these quickly. You'll actually have some of these examples here. The aqueduct is similar to a bridge as before. The aqueduct can cross water or land. Those are these three symbols in the middle. But, and that's the 2 stars here, it is mandatory that the beginning and the end are on green spaces. You'll see that here. The beginning and the end are on green spaces. It crosses once water and twice other green spaces. Here, same again with the different requirements. We have to be adjacent to water, which I am. We have to be adjacent to a road, which I am. And we have to be adjacent to an F. If you have a monument that consists of several pieces, like the Great Wall of China, you'll see here that I can place these 3 different tiles the way I want. I could also turn this one around if I wanted to, as long as they're all touching each other. For the requirements, it also just matters that one of the tiles of the monument is adjacent to any of these symbols down here. So in this case, we have all of them adjacent to the rock and tree tile. We have these 2 here adjacent to an H, and we have these 2 here adjacent to a road. And for the Moai, you see actually that there can be gaps in between the different symbols, the different monuments. So you see here these gaps. They can be around a corner, as you see here. Straight line or corner, both are possible. And you see that they actually all touch a road in this case. These 2 actually also touch this rock and tree formation. Should you get a monument with a population symbol on it or a resource on it, once you can take that monument to yourself, you also get automatically these resources right away. So you'll add here either the green one if you get the aqueduct, or you'll add the population if you get the Great Wall of China. And so during a round, we'll just go through the turn order over and over and over again until everybody either reached 7 or 9 in case they took a loan. And then everybody who has reached 7 or 9, they actually move here their marker out of the field so that it's clear that they're now out and done with the round. And we'll wait until everybody has finished. In the case that you cannot buy anything anymore because there's nothing left for you to buy, or you don't have enough money to buy whatever is left, in that case, you're done too. Please also note that if you can still buy something and you have some money left, you have to buy it and you have to place the tile somewhere in your puzzle. Once everybody is done with all of their actions, this is the end of the round, and we're now preparing the board for the next round. For this, we'll remove all the building tiles from this round. They will not be available anymore. We'll turn around the next pieces of each kind. We'll refill here the roads, back to 2 rows of long ones and 2 sets of small ones. We'll also replace the tower in case somebody purchased it. We'll then set all the gold of each player back to 0. And last, we define the turn order for the next round. For this, we'll look first at who has the first player pedestal. That person goes first. Then, if somebody has a second pedestal, they will go second. Or otherwise, we check who has the lowest number in population. That person will go next. And if several people have the same number of population, then it's the person who has the fewest number of monuments on their board that will go next. And if there's still a tie in this, then we'll just stick to the order that we had before. And with this, we're ready for the next round, which will be started again by the player who was number 1 here, and then in this order as it's shown here. We'll play 10 of these rounds until all of these pieces are gone, or until a person has reached with their population here the last space, the purple space, and at the end of that round, we would finish the game. We'll flip around the main board and we'll count all the points. And here are some hints for the first game. Most importantly, you don't really have to push hard here for the population. Yes, you can get victory points up here, but the most you can get here is 3 victory points, which isn't really worth so much overall. If we look at all these 5 different ways to score, You can get easily here, usually for the resource with the lowest number of points, you can get something like 8, 9, or 10. You just have to make sure during the game that you do push them up all at the same time, but that happens rather organically. So you don't really have to focus so much on that. Then you have the monuments, and I'll get back to those in a minute. But there you get maybe, I don't know, 6, 7. If you're really good, you get 8 points out of it. What you really should look at is the bottom two, because there, if you plan it well, you can get from this one here, the rocks and the trees. If you build your roads out far enough, up here, there are 5 points. And you can easily get 7 or 8 points from these formations if they're still visible and if they're adjacent to a tile that you placed. So that's a lot of points compared to the 3 that you can get here for the population. And of course, it's a puzzle game. So with the puzzle, you'll get a lot more points if you build your puzzle densely. You don't leave any spaces out there. So you have to try to figure out how to fill these sides here. And usually what you realize is that you can buy roads and put those roads then on top of these other tiles to get extra points for each of these tiles that are finished and that are enclosed between other tiles. Again, the only way that you don't get to score them is if they're exposed to some green spaces around them, which this, and even these two are. So this is not really good boards that I built here. So try to build as densely as possible. And one of the tricky things that you really have to learn early is that you cannot neglect the roads. The roads are very important. If you don't have the roads, you can't build anything up here because very soon you're gonna kind of fill up everything down here and you can't build your roads out anymore. So plan ahead for where these roads should be going afterwards on the board so that you can use these roads to place other city tiles along them or monuments, whatever you want. You almost always need a road to place another tile along it. Unless, of course, you have a city tile that has the same color as of another city tile that you already have. But that doesn't happen too often. So you need a road to really have full flexibility. And so I actually suggest that if you realize that your board now becomes crowded and you won't be able to move your road out, get a tower. But you need to know that while in the first 2, 3 rounds, nobody takes towers, starting around 5 or so, there's always somebody who will take the tower before you. So towers might be the first thing you need to start your round so that later on you can build your roads there. However, of course, if you take a tower first, somebody will take a really nice city tile that you wanted too. And I think that's the very interesting part about World Wonders is always trying to figure out which move should I do right now so that somebody else doesn't take away what I really want. And that's less of an issue if you play a 2, 3 player game. It's much more of an issue if you play a 4, 5 player game, where with the 4, 5 player game, the other players will always take stuff away from you. And it's much more difficult to plan ahead than in a 2, 3 player game. Now, I wanted to come back to the monuments. And my wife and I quite disagree in what I'm going to say now. I personally will give you the hint that you don't focus on monuments. And why do I say that? It's because you don't get so many victory points there. There are 10 rounds, and you will not get 10 monuments. You will get maybe 6. So don't play your whole game focused on this when you could be focused on building a very dense city or actually getting tiles all the way up to the rocks and tree spaces on your board. The issue is that because this is called World Wonders and because each World Wonder has this really nice tactile tile, you'll want to have these monuments and you'll go for it and you go try to build stuff for it. I don't think it's worth it. If you can't take a monument, of course you take it. But don't start building stuff for the monument only to realize then that it kind of messes up your whole puzzle. Now, the reason why my wife disagrees is because, yes, in the last 2 games or so, I won because I had the most monuments, but it wasn't the only reason why I won. They just fit in my puzzle at that point. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't fully plan to fit those monuments so well, they just did. But in most games that we've played, it was more around these 5 to 6 monuments that people had. So that's why I think monuments are overrated, but they're really, really cool. So yeah, I understand the appeal, and that's exactly what the game designer wanted to do with this, is they wanted to get you to take these monuments and go all for it. But I actually think building a nice puzzle with the city tiles gets you more points. And that's where it wonders. A fun game for the whole family. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And I'm looking forward to having you back here on the channel in the future. But before you go, and if you still want to see how to do it, next up is a section on how to set up this game. To set up the game, you'll start by placing the main board on the table. If you play with 4 players, you will also add this board here, and if you have 5 players, you'll actually also add this board here. Now we're going to play with 4 players here, so I'll stay just with this extra board. You'll then take these tiles that you have, you'll shuffle them, and you'll place them in the designated space here, and you flip around the top of these tiles. And you do this with all the others that I have here on this board too. Next, you'll take the monument cards, you'll shuffle that deck too, you'll put it on the side, and then you reveal the top 3 cards. Then go ahead and find the corresponding pieces in your puzzle set here and place it right next or on top of the card. I prefer next to it so that you actually still see what the card says. We'll then take the 2 turn order pedestals, put the big one here on the first player spot and the second one in the second player spot. We will also place a tower here. You'll then also add roads. In the 4-player game, you'll add 2 long roads and 2 sets of short roads. These sets are always in this combination. If you have only 1 to 2 players, then you'll only have 1 long and 1 set of short ones. For a 3-player game, you'll have 2 long ones and a set of short ones. And for the 5-player game, you will add another long road here. Also take out the loans and place them here next to the board. Then we'll take out the player boards. I'll put it right here, just for 1 player to show you how it works. The puzzle board actually has 2 sides, one with a lake in it, that's the A side, and on the back side it has a river that is different in all the different boards that are in the game. I recommend that you start with the A side with the lake in the middle. It's the same for the player marker board. It has an A side and a B side. It's important here that just all the players use the same side of the board. I also recommend that you start with an A. You also have little tokens here that go on your player board. You'll place those here on the 0 spot for all 5 of them. And then you take your player markers and you'll shuffle them or put them in a random order here. For the first round, you put them here on these turn order spots that you have on this board. This is the first player, this is the last player. There are also some player aids. I will explain those later. You might want to place those on the table also for the first game that you play. And finally, every player gets a long road here that they get to place here, touching the sidewalk. It can either be horizontally or it can be vertically. And that's it. We're ready to get started.